Okay, so let's dive into this developer CV template. So just as a prefix, this is actually my CV in terms of like the formatting and everything. Obviously, I've taken off all of the links and all of the, I guess, identifying information, but I've left some stuff in, including the technical skills. And actually, some of this I need to update anyway. This is my sort of CV from towards the end of last year when I was looking for my second role as a front-end developer. But yeah, I used this similar one for my first role as well. So yeah, it's kind of got me 2 jobs so far. And I guess I've actually had a few more offers than that as well over the last 2 years since I started learning to code back in 2020. And then, as I said, I think in previous videos, I got my first developer job about just over 12 months, maybe more towards 14 months after I started learning HTML and CSS. So yeah, can certainly attest to this CV template works quite well. And it's based on sort of feedback and iterations that I've done myself, as well as speaking to recruiters as well. And had a lot of feedback when I was trying to break into the tech industry. I spoke to a lot of recruiters, and yeah, I'll go through some of that as well. So I guess from the outset, as I said, this is a CV template. I don't have it hosted anywhere, but I am currently offering sort of free one-to-one, a half an hour one-to-one session sort of through a video link or call. So if you would like to perhaps have your CV reviewed or you'd like to have access to the template, you just need to click the link below in the comments. Sorry, in the description box, and yeah, that will be my calendar, and you can book in half an hour with me and I can go through it in a bit more detail. And that's what I've been doing with a few guys recently, is sort of helping them go from either a sort of junior self-taught or bootcamp, and hopefully they'll be sort of on their way to getting their first tech jobs. So yeah, and I've given them both of this this CV template and obviously a bunch of more personalized information, but yeah, we'll keep it generic for this video anyway. So as you can see here, anything in brackets is kind of something that I've taken out. And actually, if you do have the template, if we do connect, yeah, I would obviously recommend to remove kind of everything and just use it as a, I guess, as a guide. So yeah, so obviously at the very top, you want to put your full name, and this should be the same name that you have across, I obviously maybe not email, but GitHub and LinkedIn and anywhere else you are online that obviously you want to be found. So I'll just close that. So then in here you've got location. So I actually have my location in terms of, I guess, town, and then town and country on here, just if there's any remote roles as well. But you can put remote as well. So you could do something like, let's just say London, UK, and then but like open to remote. So something like that. So it's just a one-liner of where you are, but also if you're open to remote or not. That's something I would do. And I know sort of one of the mentees that I had a quick call with. Was it this week, last week? He was open to remote, so I would advise to have that. So next step would be email. So you can add links here, and I would do that and have your GitHub and then your LinkedIn. And just a note on the LinkedIn, and actually I can show you perhaps if I go over here. I don't know if you can see this, but my LinkedIn is just Chris-Cooper after the linkedin.com/in/. So it's kind of like a custom URL rather than a really long one, and it's a lot nicer to do. So I think it's just in settings somewhere, you'll be able to find it. And yeah, I would recommend sort of trying that. And having a custom LinkedIn URL so that it's just a lot easier to find. And as well, if someone's trying to type it in, let's say if they print out, well, actually, I guess in this case, you wouldn't, if you print it out, you wouldn't have the link. But if they try and, sort of type it in for whatever reason, it will go off to that. So yes, just as a note, I am using Pages here. I do have a Word version of this saved as well, but I always save it as a PDF before you send it off for any applications, just so the formatting can't shift around, or different fonts that might not be available. Always save it as a PDF. So I guess that's sort of the first big tip really as well. So yeah, to have all of this in check and save it as a PDF once you're done. So Top section should be a profile. I think I've got like 3 sentences, short ones on mine. And just so you know, I think mine goes to about 2 pages. So obviously with work experience, I had a bit more from my previous job. And obviously the profile is bulked out a bit. So yeah, it's 2 pages. Any more than that, I think is too long. I think actually my first developer CV, like when I first created this, it was just 1 page because I only had my previous work experience, which obviously wasn't tech related. So I had actually a project here as well, which I was proud of and sort of noted that rather than my sort of past in the travel industry. So anyway, going back to the profile, as I said, 2 or 3 sentences about who you are, what type of role you're looking for. And you can also include a line if you're looking for remote roles, or you can kind of have it up here. If it's a deal breaker, then you could even just say like open to remote roles only or something like that. And just, preface that and obviously only apply to such roles that you might find online. So next step here is technical skills. So I've broken these down into front end, back end, and other. If you're in, let's just assuming front end developer, as a lot of juniors and bootcamp grads are, or full stack. So that's why I've done that split. If you're just front end, you could just have technology skills and then other. You could just list all of them. It's just a different way of sort of breaking that down. And for myself, obviously with state management, for example, you can list Redux and Context API and or whatever else. With the CSS, you can have Tailwind, CSS modules. Obviously, this is Sass, styled components, so CSS in JS. I kind of just left it with just the ones that I'm most comfortable in, and don't want to sort of put too many down. In terms of the back end, I think one thing is important, even if you're a front-end developer, I would just put working with APIs, or what APIs you've worked with. Often, if you're front-end dev, you're not going to be building them or sort of doing schemas, that kind of thing. You'll just be calling them. It's a vital skill to know and sort of how that interfaces sort of between the front and the back end. So that's why I have that here. And obviously I've now firstly worked with REST and GraphQL APIs, sort of in a professional capacity, but also built my own, certainly REST APIs. I don't think I've built a GraphQL one other than sort of on a course. And then in terms of other, I put Agile, accessibility, Git workflow, and then here we've got Jest and React testing library as sort of testing frameworks. And actually I would put that now as this, like frameworks. And you could put Enzyme, Jest, for example, or I guess in my case we're currently refactoring from Enzyme to Jest and RTL. There's a number of different ways to do that. Jira and Confluence as well, just ticket management and then documentation. So often big companies will have either this system or probably one very similar, so you can kind of sometimes if you want to go off the job spec, just put in what they work with, and they're all very similar, and you could probably within about 5 minutes be up and running with that. So next is work experience. So I would include the job title or position and then also the company name, just so it kind of matches up with your LinkedIn. You can put the location or remote, depending on what it is, and also just the date started and then to present if you're currently there. Otherwise, the date ended, I think is nice to have, and then you can clearly see how long someone was at the company. So again, a quick sentence on what you currently work on for the company. So, I guess in my example, let's say it'll be a front-end web application and I'm part of the X team handling this section or these repositories or these websites. You can even link the website if you've got stats as well about how many visitors or how much revenue goes through the website, if it's e-commerce, for example. It's good to add that in as well. And it kind of puts a quantifiable value, not only to your role, but also the company itself. So, it could be you're in a sort of a one-man team, or you could be in a large multinational company. So it's good to kind of just have some metrics if you can and if you're allowed. Otherwise, sometimes the company name will carry you forward. I guess depends if they've heard of it or not. So, and then I would put a day-to-day, I utilize X. So that's some tech skills. You might be working on a specific project. Obviously, I wouldn't go into too much detail here. It's best not to, because obviously this is a company project, for example. But yeah, you can kind of list some of the skills that you're either learning or working on at the moment. So for example, migrating from JavaScript to TypeScript, or something like that, And then, yeah, I then obviously have a second previous position now. And this one, I worked on, so it's past tense because the date ended. And then I also maintained a number of internal software tools and websites, which was true. Obviously, at the time, there were a number of different repositories that I contributed to. And then for here, I've done some bullet points. So kind of also to bulk it out a bit, because I was there for a little over a year, just under a year and a half. And yeah, obviously learned a lot in my first role. But I wanted to have some different sections because, I didn't do multiple projects. There was kind of, I guess, 2 or 3 main projects that I worked on and 2 repositories within that. So, developing high quality, well-tested code using JavaScript, and then I've put in TypeScript, React, and Next.js, kind of like the frameworks that we're actually using, HTML and CSS, so like just the basics there. The next one I've put about implementing user stories and features, because that's basically what you're doing, right? That is your job. So of course you're writing code, but really you're obviously writing code to complete user stories and tickets, and obviously get the product better as per whoever has come up with that, whether it's let's say a delivery lead, a project manager, the UI UX team maybe, who have obviously designed and maybe done some analysis on what they should build. And yeah, obviously I put about handling layout, accessibility, and ensuring the site is performant on both mobile and web as well, just so that it's clear that you're a mobile first developer, or you certainly take that into consideration. Obviously, there's a lot of traffic, probably the majority of most websites are now on mobile. In terms of traffic from the users, it's very important to have a good experience across both platforms. So you can see again, I've put utilizing APIs and implementing third-party packages and scripts. I think when I was actually applying for roles, I included what these were. If they're specific to, let's say, your industry, I guess, for example, mine was e-commerce, you can add in specific things, or maybe more generic. So, for example, Google Tag Manager, or like the Facebook Pixel, that kind of thing. Yeah, you can add those in. But yeah, I just put third-party packages and scripts. Again, if you've worked on, let's say, legacy code bases as well, I would put that in. Some of my work, and sort of on a rotating basis as I guess business as usual, was fixing old issues or broken code within legacy code base that we had, which was the C# or sort of the .NET MVC, I think. So yeah, it was quite an interesting application. It was good to learn, and as you can see here, I've kind of put C# as one of the backend languages that I know, because yeah, obviously I was working with it and working with APIs, and also the front end code within that. So the CS HTML, which don't miss at all, I have to say. Could probably avoid it if you can, and that's why I was looking for my next role was a pure front end role, because this was actually a junior full stack developer role because of the C# backend. So then I'd also add in about code reviews if you do them, suggesting improvements, particularly for front-end PRs. So obviously I didn't review any back-end or sort of back-end PRs really. That was more for senior devs, and I didn't actually review many front-end ones, but there were a few that I did. And obviously now I do that more basically every day or whenever one comes in. So yeah, I would add in if you do that currently. And then also I'm just an agile team member actively contributing to stand-up, ideation sessions and demos. So for example, ideation could be refinement of tickets, or sort of the Three Amigos if you practice that. So I'm not currently in a Three Amigo team, but I do go to the refinement sessions, and just obviously voice any concerns or opinions as and when they arise. And then I would also then have one more thing, because this is all quite generic and not really describing what you do day to day. I would say in one project, and then you can go into more detail about a specific project or sprint where you contributed to a new feature or product which benefited the company or the users. Obviously, it's assuming the end that it was a benefit. It might have just been a spike that you checked something to see if there was a benefit, and then actually ended up that it wasn't. There's lots of different things you could put here, but I would ideally have a specific project where, let's say, you implemented something and there was a return on investment, I guess. It might be that you worked with, obviously, let's say yourself or a team, or maybe, yeah, you did go solo and sort of just try to, yeah, I guess, go about coding that project on your own. So, yeah, you can kind of play around with it, whichever project might work for you. If you don't have one, it's sort of your first developer job, you can go about one of your projects that you've done in your free time, let's say. So if it was, you can say sort of outside of this job, I've built X, for example, and you can even link the project as well, which is a quite good idea to do, to actually have the repo link sort of within the text here. And then also I put down recently I've been working on X, so just an example of what you're currently working on. Obviously, this was taken from my previous CV. So, for example, I would move this line up to here now in my second job. And yeah, it was obviously just an example of what I was currently working on, what I was learning, and it just shows that you're still progressing and still getting better, which obviously, yeah, we all should be. So in terms of education, as you can see here, I've kind of got the learning platform, university or college. On the left, we've got the date started and date ended. For example, my one had, my college, university, and then free code camp. And that was my most recent education. So as you can see here, we're kind of going in, I guess, was it chronological or reverse chronological order, sorry. So the newest positions at the top, and then we work down. Because at some point, this job, for example, I will take off my CV because I'll have probably other jobs. Not that I'm looking or actually would like to move anytime soon. I can actually see myself at my current company for a very long time. But if you did, let's say, jump a few jobs, you might then find you're going into over 2 pages. And I would say that is either then a case to sort of really whittle it down and have just 1 or 2 lines about it, or just say at the very bottom, as I do, full work experience, education and certificates are available on my LinkedIn. So that's kind of a key piece there, is not to have it too long and just actually have, let's say, your LinkedIn as the full resume. This is more just details of the jobs that you, I guess, like your last 2 or 3 jobs, let's say, technical skills, which will be on your CV anyway, and a bit more about your personal profile. And I think generally that works quite well. As I said, if you don't have work experience, I would fill this out with like project experience, for example, and just change this to the projects you worked on and have a link to each of them, sort of the GitHub repository and or the live hosted site. Live hosted would actually be really good to have, because often, let's say it's a HR or hiring manager that are first reviewing your CV, they're probably not going to go to GitHub if they actually know what it is as well, and download your code, install it, and then run it locally. No one's going to be doing that, trust me. So yeah, I would do that. And as you can see here, I've linked my LinkedIn, although actually no, that's not my link anymore. So if I just go over here, you can see we've got the about section. So here's where I would kind of mirror the personal profile. For mine, it's very simple. I haven't given it much thought because obviously I'm not open to work. Although I realize I am actually still open here. So I need to change that and turn that off. That might be why I'm getting so many recruiters still coming out to me. But yeah, so anyway, without going sort of through too much, as you can see here, I do have a few other jobs, and this was my job before getting into technology. It's completely open, so I don't mind showing all of this, but it's good to have on your LinkedIn, but perhaps not on your CV. A hiring manager now for a front-end developer position doesn't need to know that I was a shop assistant in 2014, and then before that, I guess was working behind a bar at a cricket ground in London for only a couple of days or so. But I don't know why it says 3 months. I guess it was over summer, but it was more sporadic than sort of every day. So yeah, as you can see here, the Free Code Camp, I've listed out some of the courses and modules that I've done. So, it looks quite good. And computer software engineering is my education, because it really is. Free Code Camp is such a great resource. And yeah, I wouldn't undersell it. I would say that, it's an open source online coding bootcamp, really. It's obviously self-paced and you get what you put in. But yeah, it's really good. And that's why I've also listed these certificates here. So again, it's kind of like not social proof, but it's validating that you do know JavaScript and responsive web design and that kind of thing, especially if you're looking for your first role. Obviously, your portfolio will hopefully show that, but yeah, having certificates sort of demonstrates that. And that actually brings me on to these skills here as well. So skills assessments. So you can see I've done the JavaScript one, I've passed it. And actually, if I click on this, I think it shows a report. And you can see I was in the top 5%, which is good. And you can add that badge to your profile. So what some recruiters might do is if they're looking for someone with a very specific skill, let's say, I don't know, like one of the new technologies, maybe sort of Rust. If you've done the Rust, if there is one, the LinkedIn skills assessment, you'll sort of be placed in that candidate pool of Rust developers, really, who sort of know and can demonstrate that skill. So just as an example, I've done JavaScript and a few others, and also you can see endorsements as well. So this is obviously something that you shouldn't really game. It's more, you connect with people and other developers. And yeah, obviously I've picked up a few endorsements and I've endorsed other people as well. This used to be all like travel technology related things. And you can see I've done the CSS one as well. But yeah, so you can move these around. So yeah, I've put in just the ones that I want to see there. So let's just go back to my profile. So that's skills, and then courses as well. I've listed out some of the courses that I've taken, and you can associate them to different companies as well. So if, for example, you've taken a course that's part of a specific company, as I did here with my travel, at my travel tech job. That was this one, where otherwise I added some Codecademy ones as well, because they were courses, I would say, rather than sort of earning a certificate at the end. These were just the free ones. But again, it shows that you've learned TypeScript and, basic Ruby, React and JavaScript, really. And that all helps. So yeah, I appreciate this video is getting a little bit long now. But really, I guess the key was, don't let your CV sort of limit you at all. With a few simple sort of changes, I think anyone can have a good looking CV, just 1 or 2 pages with all the information that someone needs to make a decision on you. And, often they say that they'll just glance at it, hiring managers this is, and, within 10, 20 seconds, they'll have an answer, whether it's yes or no, whether that person will proceed. So, I think having it nicely laid out like this kind of helps. And as I said, if you would like a more in-depth developer CV review of your own, feel free to click the calendar link in the description box below. And I'd be more than happy to sit down, go through your specific situation, and let's kind of come up with a plan of how we can get you that next or your first tech job. So thank you very much for watching. I hope it was insightful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.